So, hello. This is a video I wanted to do for some time, but I haven't done it. I don't know why. I think it's because I feel rather uncomfortable filming a very big pile of books in one video, knowing my history that my videos are never shorter than I think like 40 minutes. What is the average time on my channel? I haven't checked, but they're quite long. So this is the reason why I postponed doing this huge book haul video. I have been actually collecting some of these books for some months now, and I was doing that so I could do a big book haul video. So hello, welcome or welcome back. If you are new here, you probably are not aware that I'm very terrible at introducing myself, but this time I remembered. And yeah, my name is Alex and I will be introducing these books in this video. So buckle up and let's start. First, let me get some carrot juice so I can freshen up my throat, because this is going to take a while. So I decided to start first with these three books, which are actually in Serbian. Two of them I bought in Serbia, and this one is actually in the dialect spoken in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I bought it in Croatia. So since I'm already showing it, I shall speak a little bit about it. I've already read this book some years ago. This is Nigdje, niotkuda, or From Nowhere to Nowhere in English translation by Bekim Sejranović, and it is his retelling of his life story. I perceived it as sort of a memoir. From his childhood, his early adulthood, and studies in back then still Yugoslavia. I believe he was attending university in Zagreb, if my memory serves me well, and then his refugee status in Norway, and it goes back and forth in timeline, and it is basically about his life and how his idea of his identity changed with the dissolution of Yugoslavia and the beginning of the Civil War. So if you're interested to learn about this particular event in the region from a very personal perspective and how it affected the lives of ordinary people, civilians, I highly recommend this book. It's available in English translation, and I will leave the information regarding the English translation in the description. So that's one. Hold on, where should I put this now? Maybe here. Okay, this is gonna be the already done pile. Next one is Emil Habibi. In Serbian it's called Optimista, Čudnovati, nestanak, Srećka, Nesrećkovića, and I checked online. This book exists also in English translation. I ran into it by accident in one of the bookstores in Serbia that I visited now in September, I believe, and the story struck me, and I wanted to read more Palestinian authors, and this novel was very peculiar in the style and the topic that he was handling. I'm going to read what the book is about from Storygraph, because I found it on Storygraph as well. Hold on a second. book is called, in English translation, The Secret Life of Saeed, the Pessoptimist. The description says, this contemporary classic, the story of a Palestinian who became a citizen of Israel, combines fact and fantasy, tragedy and comedy. Saeed is the comic hero, the luckless fool, whose tale tells of aggression and resistance, terror and heroism, reason and loyalty that typify the hardship and struggles of Arabs in Israel. An informer for the Zionist state, his stupidity, candor, and cowardice make him more of a victim than a villain. But in a series of tragic-comic episodes, he is gradually transformed from a disaster-haunted, gullible collaborator into a Palestinian, no hero still, but a simple man intent on survival and perhaps happiness. And this time, this kind of literature, I believe, is particularly important to be read. Another author from Middle East is Naim. The book is called Farida. I believe he is an Iraqi writer. He was a diplomat of the sciences of law at the University of Baghdad. He studied literature at the Sorbonne. Since 1954, he lived in Canada. So Farida is the story of love and friendship taking place in Iraq in 1936, while the shadow of ever-looming war is present. Farida is actually an Iraqi Jew, and she is hated and ignored, hated because of her ethnic identity, but ignored for being a woman. And the book is about her struggle for life, freedom, and at the moment of turmoil in the Iraqi society. I was translating this from Serbian in the moment, that's why it took me a little bit of time. I haven't actually looked whether this was translated in English, but I'm pretty sure it is, and I will definitely leave also the English translation, the title. So this book is translated from French by Ljiljana Matić, and I forgot to say that this book is translated from Arabic by Srpko Leštarić. And both of these books were published by the same publisher, the Clio, it's called, Serbian publisher. I already mentioned them in one of the previous videos. Oh yes, and I forgot completely that I actually bought this book in Croatia as well when I was on a holiday. Okay, next pile, I'll just continue with more Palestinian authors. These books are in English. This one is a rather known book, and I've seen many people talk about it. It's Suzanne Abul Hawa, Against the Loveless World. And it is about a woman who is in Israeli prison. The description says, Nahar sits in Israeli prison. Many in the world outside call her a terrorist, and just as many call her a revolutionary, a hero. But the truth is more complicated. She was named for the river her mother crossed when she fled Israel's invasion of Palestine, and grew up into a girl who carried in her bones the desperation of being a refugee. She was a woman who went to Palestine and found books, friends, politics, and a purpose. Nahar sits in her cell and tells her story. I'm really looking forward to reading this book. I've had it on my radar for some time, but I haven't yet picked it up simply because I'm not sure whether I'm emotionally prepared to read it, but we shall see. Next one is The Book of Disappearance by Ibtisam Azem. This book was published, I believe, in 2016, and this is a republication. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Is this translated? Or is it written... Oh, this one is written in English, I believe, so it's not translated from another language. Sorry about that. This one, however, is translated, and the translator is Sinan Antun. And the book, it says here, the description says, Allah is haunted by his grandmother's memories of being displaced from Jaffa and becoming a refugee in her homeland after the Nakba. Ariel, Allah's neighbor and friend, is a liberal Zionist, critical of the military accusation of the West Bank and Gaza, yet faithful to the project of Israel. When he wakes up one morning to find that all Palestinians have suddenly vanished, Allah included, Ariel begins searching for clues to the secret of their collective disappearance. I am so curious how this story is going to evolve, because it is a really interesting premise, knowing the history of Israel and what it has been doing for the last 76 years is actively trying to erase Palestinians from world's collective memory, their culture, their existence, their physical existence. So this is going to be interesting. It does also remind me of that film Leftovers. It's actually a TV show from a few years ago where people just woke up one day and as they were preparing to start their morning and their loved ones, they just disappeared and nobody knows what happened to them. So I'm really excited about this one. Next one is A Day in the Life of Abed Salama. Again, this I think is fairly known to people. It's by Nathan Thrall and it has won a Pulitzer Prize. So my question is, did this book win the Pulitzer Prize, or did he win it with some other book and they just put a sticker on so you would get hooked? What is this book about? Let's see if there is a description here. This one, one of the things I really dislike about these Penguin publications is that they don't have a summary anywhere. It's just what some critics have written about it, and you can't really read unless you... Hold on, let me see again. Checking Storygraph. Storygraph says, 5-year-old Milad Salama is excited for the school trip to a theme park on the outskirts of Jerusalem. On the way, his bus collides with a semi-trailer in a horrific accident. His father, Abed, gets word of the crash and rushes to the site. The scene is chaos. The children have been taken to different hospitals in Jerusalem and the West Bank. Some are missing, others cannot be identified. Abed sets off on an odyssey to learn Milad's fate. It is every parent's worst nightmare, but for Abed it is compounded by the maze of physical, emotional, and bureaucratic obstacles he must navigate because he is Palestinian. He is on the wrong side of the separation wall, holds the wrong ID to pass the military checkpoints, and has the wrong papers to enter the city of Jerusalem. Well, that's all I need to know. So that's Nathan's A Day in the Life of Abed Salama. I actually watched a film a while ago that has a similar theme where a son of this one man, Palestinian man, is injured and he's trying to get to him to the hospital, but he doesn't have the appropriate papers so he could cross the checkpoints. So he's trying to find these illegal ways to get to the hospital that is on the other side of the wall. I don't remember the name of the film, but I will put it in the description yet again. Another one, A Woman is No Man, but by Etaf Rum. 1990 Palestine. 17-year-old Isra prefers reading books to entertaining the suitors her father has chosen for her. Over the course of a week, the naive, dreamy girl finds herself quickly betrothed and married and is soon living in Brooklyn. There Isra struggles to adapt to the expectations of her oppressive mother-in-law Farida and strange new husband Adam, a pressure that intensifies as she begins to have children, 4 daughters instead of sons. Farida tells Isra she must bear. Now, Brooklyn, 2008, 18-year-old Dea, Isra's oldest daughter, must meet with potential husbands at her grandmother's Farida's insistence. Though her only desire is to go to college, but her grandmother is firm on the matter. The only way to secure a worthy future for Dea is through marriage to the right man. This author has been quite active online, and she has recently also published another book that I plan to read. And she made a post a while ago about all these readers who were making these TikTok videos of themselves throwing her book in a trash after she expressed her solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza. And her post was really interesting in the sense how she understood how some readers don't assign humanity to Palestinians beyond the idea of their existence on the paper, on the printed paper. So I thought that was quite moving and very needed and much needed to criticize how readers, when at the time some readers, not all of course, when it is necessary to go beyond the read books and actually learn from what they've been reading, these stories, that we should feel privileged that these authors are sharing with us. They don't really have the capacity to do so, and I believe that is a very important point. So that is A Woman Is No Man. Next Palestinian author is actually recently published, and I already mentioned her in a previous video. Her name is Maya Abu Al-Hayyat, translated by Hazem Jamjoom. The book is No One Knows Their Blood Type, and it is published by Cleveland State University Poetry Center. So I believe this book also doesn't have a description. No, it just has a short biography of the author herself. But it's quite beautiful, the cover. And on the inside, it has the same painting, just in color, on both sides of the cover. It's really beautiful. So let's look it up again on Storygraph. No One Knows Their Blood Type is a novel of identity, belonging, and conflicting truths, of stories, secrets, songs, rumors, and lies. On the day that her father dies, Jumana makes a discovery about her blood type. Hers could not have been inherited from her father, the father she sometimes longed for but always despised. This extraordinary novel of Palestine centers its narrative on the battlefield of history, but not how women live every day and the colonial context of their embodied lives. With humor and exhilarating inventiveness, it asks, why aren't questions of love, friendship, parenthood, and desire at the core of our conversations about liberty and freedom? How would this transform our ideas of resistance? One thing I did learn this summer when I was writing an essay on everyday resistance is reading about the Palestinian everyday resistance and how they practice it, in particular how women in the occupied territories practice everyday resistance. So that's Maya Abu Al-Hayyat, and we're moving fast, or we're not. It's already 21 minutes, but we shall see. how this goes. Okay, this pile here is basically a collection of different authors from different regions. I was not able to compile any sort of criteria under which I should make this pile, so it's just like a little goulash of a pile. First one is The Door by Magda. Is it Szabo? I think it's Szabo. This book, I don't think it needs introduction. If you are following some of the other channels that I have also mentioned in my vlogs, then you probably have heard of this book before, and or if you're not, maybe you're familiar with Hungarian authors. Sophie actually is a big fan of Magda's writing. It says, Emergence is a domestic servant, strong, fierce, eccentric, and with reputation for being a first-rate housekeeper. When Magda, a young Hungarian writer, employs her, she never imagines how important this woman will become to her. It takes 20 years for a complex trust between them to be slowly, carefully built. But Emergence has secrets. But Emergence has secrets and vulnerabilities beneath her indomitable exterior that will test Magda's friendship and change the complexion of both their lives irreversibly. So a relationship between two women. One is the employer, the other is the employee. We shall see how this goes. I actually never read any Hungarian authors, even though we have Hungarian Serbian authors or Hungarian authors who write in Serbian, who were born and raised in the north part of Serbia. Or do they actually write in Hungarian? That is actually a very good question. I do not know. But the one author in particular that I'm referring to, now I would have to go and check. It's something to think about. Next book is Walking on the Ceiling, a novel by Ayşegül Savaş. This one I wanted to read for some time, and I read her other novel, White on White. And it was in the bookstore for a while, and I decided not to buy it. The bookstore we have here in Ljubljana. And they had White on White. And then both books were sold, and I was waiting for them to reorder them. And then they reordered only White on White. And I was like, after 6 months of waiting, I went to the counter and asked them if they could reorder it. And they did. So I recently got this one. Nunu moves to Paris to start over, leaving behind her childhood home in Istanbul. She knows no one in the city. She longs for connection. I think this is the same or similar premise, because in White on White, also the character, the main character, is in Paris, and she's actually writing her PhD. She's researching sculptures, medieval sculptures, and I can't remember what was her actual hypothesis, but it was interesting, and I guess this could be something that Ayşegül Savaş explores further. I'm not sure which one was published first. This was published in 2019. Let's see, White on White was published 2021. So I guess this was the first book that was published. It says, one day she meets M, an older British writer whose novels about Istanbul Nunu has always admired. They find themselves walking the streets of Paris and talking late into the night, developing an unusual friendship. As they talk, she begins to confront her past relationships, her mother's silence and anger, her father's death, and the growing unrest in Istanbul. Their intimacy deepens, as does Nunu's fear of revealing too much to M, of giving too much of herself away. An unguarded glimpse of a young woman's coming into her own, walking on the ceiling, is about love in its varied forms. The complexities of memory, pleasure of the mind and the place is real and imagined. We can't escape. So excited about this one. So next one is not, it is not a novel, it's actually a book, poetry book, and I used to read a lot of poetry long time ago because I'm 150 years old. But because the price of the books, poetry books in English, are almost the same and sometimes even more expensive than novels, I kind of stopped buying poetry books, which is a shame, and I'm trying to change that now. And I guess this is one of the books that I bought in last 3 months, and it seemed intriguing. I opened the book and I started reading some of the poems when I was in the bookstore, and I was quite intrigued by this one poem in particular, and I decided to get it. It's called So to Speak by Terence Hayes. He is an American poet. A free frog sings to overcome its fear of birds. Talking cats tell jokes in the Jim Crow South. Green beans bling in the mouth of Lil Wayne. Contemplating fatherhood, history, and longing in poems that aim to provide keys to unlock the reader's own creativity. So to Speak is the classic Terence Hayes, playful, incisively observant, and massively alive. And we shall see how it goes. I mean, it's quite small. It's... How many pages does it have? 89 pages, so it's not that big, but it has like some interesting... I mean, this is a poem. Is it? Or is it some kind of... Oh, these are notes. These are notes on the poems. But it's still nevertheless interesting. Looking forward to that. This one I've seen, I believe, in one of the videos that Hannah did. Or did I see it somewhere else? I cannot remember where I've seen this book. But I did see it on one of the channels of the booktubers that I follow. I believe it was Hannah's. Others were Emeralds by Lang Leav, or Leave. Not sure. She's Australian Cambodian author. The daughter of Cambodian refugees, I grew up in the small Australian town of Whitlam, populated by Asian immigrants who once fled war-torn countries to rebuild their shattered lives. It is now the late 90s, and I and her tight-knit group of school friends, charismatic Brigitte, sweet, endearing Bowie, shy, inscrutable Tin, and politically minded Seeing, all lead seemingly ordinary lives far removed from the unimaginable horrors suffered by their parents. But that carefree innocence is shattered, and their last year of school, when I and her friends encounter a pair of racist men whose cruel acts of intimidation spiral into senseless violence. Grappling with the magnitude of her grief, I leaves Whitlam before her trauma has a chance to fully resolve itself. And then she goes back after her second year of college, experiencing mental health crisis. There she reconnects with those she left behind, and together they are compelled to look back on the tragedy that shaped their adolescence and examine the role they may have unwittingly played. I have been looking for Cambodian authors for some time to read, and this is one of the authors I ran into. I ran into another author, and she is actually American Cambodian author who has written a memoir, which I will present in another video, where I will do a book haul of the nonfiction I've collected in last few months. But I've never read any Cambodian authors before, and this will probably one of the first ones that I will read, and hopefully one of many to come. Next one is a quite known book on this side of BookTube, Asylum Road by Olivia Sujic. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this book, the description says, a couple drive from London to coastal Provence. Anya is preoccupied with what she feels is a relationship on the verge. Then as the sun sets one evening, Luke proposes and they return to London engaged. Back in London, the past Anya sought to contain for as long as she can remember begins to surface, and the hot summer builds to a startling climax. Curious to see what it is about. I've had this on my radar for some years now, I think like 4 years. When was this published? 2021, so 3 years. Another one is Daisy Lafarge Paul. I've also seen this book on several profiles that I follow, and I'm very curious to see how this topic is executed. Frances has fled a scandal to rural France, where she begins working on an eco-farm. There she meets the charismatic owner Paul and quickly falls under his influence. As his hold over her tightens, she finds herself entangled in a strange and uneven relationship, and is forced to question whether his charm masks a more pernicious influence. Exploring the toxicity of unchecked male power, Paul is simmering, claustrophobic debut novel from an award-winning talent. France and eco-farm and violence. That's going to be interesting. Another one is The Coming Bad Days by Sarah Bernstein or Bernstein. Bernstein. I'm leaning towards that one. More German pronunciation, I think. Or probably both are incorrect. You never know. Is this a translation? I don't think so. Doesn't seem like it is. Says here, a woman leaves the man she lives with and moves to a low stone cottage in a university town. She joins an academic department and high up in her office on the 13th floor begins a research project on the poet Paul Celan. She knows nothing of Celan, still less of her new neighbors or colleagues. I also ran into another sort of academic novel on the topic of a man who is writing or trying to write a paper on Paul Celan, and I'm thinking of maybe doing a vlog where I read those two novels. It would be interesting to see how that goes, but will it be too much of Paul Celan for one vlog? We shall see. Next one is Stone Dreams by Akram Ille. I guess that's how it's pronounced, or not maybe. It's translated by Catherine E. Young with a foreword by Thomas de Waal. It's written in Azerbaijani, and I actually read the preface, and it's really interesting to read about this author. I've never heard of him before. I, by pure chance, found the book in the bookstore here in Ljubljana, and I was quite intrigued by the premise of the novel. It says here, set during the last year of the Soviet Union, Stone Dreams tells the story of Azerbaijani actor Sadai Sadili, don't quote me on that, who lands in a Baku hospital while trying to protest an elderly Armenian man from gang of young Azerbaijanis. trying to protect, not protest. Protest is on my mind. I've been reading a book about protests, so to protect an elderly man. Okay, something of a modern day Don Quixote, Saeed has long battled the hatred and corruption he observes in contemporary Azerbaijani society. Wandering in and out of consciousness, he revisits his hometown, the ancient village of Ilis, where Christian Armenians and Muslim Azeris once lived peacefully together, and dreams of making a pilgrimage of atonement to Armenia. Actually, this author is prohibited. His books are prohibited in Azerbaijan, and I believe they had even, if I remember correctly, in the preface, they had a public burning of his books at one point. He's quite isolated socially, and the writer, the one who wrote the foreword, Thomas de Waal, was talking about how he feels really sad that he cannot expose this writer to the world. He cannot bring him outside of Azerbaijan because he is prohibited from traveling anywhere. And also he's quite reclusive and doesn't speak like any of the colonial languages, English, French, or any other language, so it's very difficult to even interview him unless you speak Azerbaijani. So I was really struck by the story, and I guess in the foreword he talks how actually this novel is based a little bit on his own experience. And I believe the village that the main character comes from is actually the village from which the author comes from, or is it it's based on the village that he comes from. I think it could be a fictionalized geographic point for the novel, for the purposes of the novel, but in reality it's based on a real place. So that's Stone Dreams. Next one is a collection of short stories by Sam Salwan, Ways of Sunlight. Who was he? He was an author. He was for sure an author, but it doesn't say. Oh yeah, it says here. This irresistible, bittersweet collection of short stories from the supreme chronicler of West Indian lives in Britain brings together two worlds, Trinidad and London. Here is an illicit love affair and on a plantation, gossip and rivalry between village washerwomen, a boy rebelling against his parents' traditions. Here too is life after leaving for England, hustling for work, aching out money for the gas meter in winter, dancing in clubs, discovering romance in a nighttime park, experiencing unexpected kindness, dreams, and disenchantment. I think this is going to be a really exciting collection of versatile experiences with different characters from Trinidad and who live in Trinidad and who have moved to London. This is safe, I believe. Still, it's safe. Next one is Titaua Peu, or Peu, translated from the French by Jeffrey Zuckerman. Introduction by Rajiv Mohabir. Pina. She is an author from Tahiti. I've never read any authors from... Hold on a second. Ugh. So I've never read any authors from any of the Pacific Islands. Hold on, I'm trying to remember. No, this will be the first one. Far from Tahiti's postcard perfect beaches, Ma and August and their 9 children live in destitute, run-down Tenaho. 8-year-old Pina, abused and neglected in equal measure, is the keeper of her family's secrets, though the weight of this knowledge soon proves to be a burden no child could ever bear. The fault lines of her family, descendants of Maohi warriors who once fended off European settlers, begin to shift and crack open, laying bare how the past shapes and haunts the present. Her brother Pauro falls in love with a Frenchman. Her sister Rosa sinks into sexual exploitation as a futile means of escape. Her eldest brother August Jr.'s addiction and temper may lead him into ruin, and Hannah, the oldest daughter who had escaped to France, is beckoned back home to fear the worst. I guess this is the exploration of one family's demise as a consequence of the colonialism and neo-colonial structures that remain maybe in Tahiti. She's the anti-colonial writer. Let's see what it says about the author. She's the author known for her politically charged, realistic portrayal of the effects of colonialism on contemporary Polynesia. Peuza's unsparing first novel, Mutismes, was published in 2003, sparking immediate scandal and making her the youngest ever published Tahitian author at age 28. Pina was awarded the 2017 Eugene Debye Prize, first for Polynesian literature. All of that sounds just right up my alley. Pina for you. And the final pile. Okay, we're getting there. Oh my god, this is gonna be a 1-hour video. I'm so sorry. I guess you can just look at the list of the books in the description. If this doesn't feel like something you would want to do for 1 hour, it is totally okay. I understand that. This is actually a pile of South African authors that I've collected. Or maybe not. Hold on. Is she South African? No, not South African. South American. Ugh. South American authors. Is this a translation? No, it's not. Hold on. It is. It's translated by Julia Sanchez, but she is, I believe, the author. From Julia Sanchez translates from Spanish. Yes, she is South American author. She's Peruvian. Gabriela Wiener or Weiner? Let's go with Weiner. Following her father's death, Gabriela Weiner returns to a strange story from her family tree, that of her great-great-grandfather, an Austral colonial explorer who stole thousands of artifacts, and an indigenous child from her home country of Peru. I love when they use this word colonial explorer. I remember encountering this word so many times when I was reading this collection of Gertrude Bell's diaries, letters, and other things that she was writing. It's such a beautiful word, isn't it? They just went there to explore. They're so misunderstood these days, these colonial explorers. As she traces a paternal legacy of abandonment, jealousy, and colonial violence, Gabriela explores the persistence of history's wounds in her own struggles with desire, love, and racism. As a migrant in Spain, suffused with ferocious wit and boundless curiosity, Undiscovered is both an imaginative leap into the past and a subversive vision of decolonized future. This was nominated for the Booker International this year and longlisted, so it was not shortlisted, but still I believe it will be worth my time. I say that now, but you never know. And finally, the book that I've been dying to read, and I got it I think like 2 weeks ago, but I do want to read the book that is actually the first part of this story. What is it called? Let's see what the story graphs say. Claudia Pinheiro. The first part is called All Yours, and it is about Ines, who follows her husband one night, and she sees him with another woman, and he is killing that woman, and she witnesses this moment, and she decides to follow him, and from then on, I'm not sure what happens. She provides him with an alibi once he becomes a suspect. Of course. What else do you do for your husband? And this one, I guess, continues where All Yours leaves us at the end. I don't know. I shall see when I start reading it. But the description says... What does it say? 15 years after killing her husband's lover, Ines is released from prison. Left to put together a new life, her old friend Mansa is out too, and together they've started a pest control and private investigation business by women for women. But Senora Bonar, one of her clients, wants Ines to do more than kill bugs. She wants her expertise and her criminal past to help her revenge on someone. I'm not sure why I'm laughing. That's quite an interesting combination of controlling pest and doing private investigation. When Ines's estranged daughter shows up, however, we realize that things are not as they seem. Crimes against women and crimes by women, the complex loyalties among friends, mothers, and daughters, and a breathtaking twist. This is classic Pinheiro, dark, intelligent, and suspenseful. I read her 2 novels, A Little Luck and Elena Knows. Both of them I loved, so Claudia Pinheiro is definitely becoming one of my favorite authors, and this was translated by Frances Riddle from Spanish. It's also a chunker, I have to say. 343, not bad. Another South American author is The Simple Art of Killing a Woman by Patricia Melo, translated from the Portuguese by Sophie Lewis. To escape an overprotective family and an abusive partner, a young lawyer accepts an assignment in the Amazonian border town of Cruzeiro do Sul. There she meets Carla, a local prosecutor, and Marcos, the son of an indigenous woman, and learns about an epidemic of violence against women that seems beyond comprehension. One thing I realized, that when you pick up South African, what is up with this glitch that I have today in my brain? South American authors, that very often they actually deal with this topic of domestic violence, violence against women, abuse, and all forms of violence that get directed towards young girls and women. And I guess there is an epidemic going on in Latin countries. It's present everywhere, but I think there in particular it's very visible. And many authors obviously have chosen to tackle this topic in order to break the taboo and to raise awareness and possibly invoke some kind of responsibility within us, that we start organizing and in order to prevent this from further escalating and becoming very horrific. I mean, it's already horrific, but becoming worse than it already is. So that's Patricia Melo. Another one is also from Brazil, Beatriz Bracher. It's called Antonio, published by Pushkin Press. On the cusp of becoming a father, Benjamin learns a disturbing family secret. His mother, years before his father was born, had a child with Benjamin. Okay, it's a Benjamin, not a Benjamin. Benjamin's father. The child died and the story fell into the shadows. Now Benjamin turns to surviving friends and family to help him uncover the truth of his tangled heritage. This was on a discount when I picked it up. It was only €8, but I've seen it there before, and every time I saw it, I always picked something else in the bookstore. So when it was discounted, I was like, all right, it's calling. The universe is sending me a sign. I should get it. Another Brazilian author, I believe, yes. This is Victor Heringer, translated by Sophie Lewis and James Young. The Alencar Costa Oliveira family talk to each other through inside jokes, often saying the opposite of what they mean, or repeating the same sentence until it acquires new meaning. But they also have a dark inheritance. Every member of the family has died of the same cause, acute melancholy. Acute melancholy. Or melancholy. Acute melancholy. Akutna melancholia. He actually committed suicide, this author, and I found out when I picked this book in the bookstore. I was Googling him. He has another book that was published some years ago, but I'm curious because the premise is very interesting. It's obviously messy families and their relations and trauma, inherited trauma, and not directly addressed like issues and historical, obviously the history of the family and the communication inside the family and how this might pertain to the tragedy that many of its members meet. And this last book, I'm not really sure what's doing in this pile. It was supposed to be in the previous pile, The Dog of the North. It's the Australian author, and this was nominated, I cannot remember, was it? Oh yeah, it says shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. And I got it also because it was discounted in another bookstore here in Ljubljana, but I wanted the book that's going to make me laugh. And when I was watching some booktubers talk about this book, they said that it has this like really a lot of humor. It's funny and it's kind of lighthearted. So I really need something like that in my life at the moment. Penny Rush has problems. Her marriage is over. She's quit her job and her parents are missing in the Australian outback. Her grandmother, meanwhile, has been found in possession of a sinister-sounding weapon called the scintillator, and something even worse in her woodshed. Freshly arrived is Santa Barbara. Penny must deal with this mounting crisis alone. So that's it. That's the last book. Not a South American author, but that's the pile, or that's the 2 piles I got for you. Let's see how big this is. Oh, this is gonna be interesting. Considering that I'm a sloth reader, what do you think? How long is it going to take me to read these books? Years, probably. But hey, I've got all the time in the world. So thank you for watching, and if you stuck around until the end, this is gonna be a 1 hour video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!